All right, so I wanted to start off the training session today by saying welcome to everybody who's in the room and welcome to everybody who's joined us virtually. I'm Brett Llewellyn, the Director of System Development and Integration, and I'm in charge of our Google Apps for Education rollout. I wanted to give a little bit of the background just so that you have some context going into this training. So we've been going through budget cuts, as you've all experienced, for as long as probably anybody can remember. We haven't been able to invest in technology as a technology department. We haven't had the money to be able to keep up on refreshing technology and to give staff and students the technology they needed. So we've passed that time. That time is over. The budgets now are expanding. We're reaching a point of reinvestment, and this technology and the Chromebook represents our down payment on investing in technology. So you all are getting the first down payment here as we begin to roll out new technology across the district. This technology also represents a shift for the district away from just being focused on Microsoft products and over to Google. The district is going Google, so we're rolling out Google Apps as a part of this. We've got the Chromebooks, and we'll be rolling out Gmail in the spring. So the district is going towards Google, and that's where we're headed. In terms of technology, we are also reaching a point too where everything's cloud-based. All of you that have smartphones know this. Your data is not stored on your phone, it's stored in the cloud. This allows a lot of great things. It's kind of a golden age of technology. It allows us to quickly stand up solutions and scale them. These devices allow us to take advantage of that in ways that others do not. So these are cloud-based devices, and that's important to understand that your data and your information is not actually stored on that device. I could literally take your Chromebook from you, hand you another one, and you would be good to go. So with that introduction, I want to turn it over to Melissa Lim, and she'll walk you through an introduction to how to use your Chromebook.
Hello, everybody. It looks like we have 3 viewers remotely. That's awesome. So let me get set up here. All right, so welcome, and this Hangout is being recorded, so you will be able to access it later. If you are watching from another location, so not one of our schools, but if you're watching from home, what you can do in your screen is that you should have a little icon that looks like a grid or a waffle at the top, and if you click on that, you'll be able to see the questions that are being submitted, or you'll be able to see the websites that I've shared. So that's for you to know that. So what I'm going to start with, let me pull up my slide deck. So if you would like this slide deck, I've got the URL down there at the bottom, so if you want to write that down, you can. So for instance, if you wanted to use this in your school to show to some teachers or some colleagues that you work with, you could go through the slide deck with them. So I'll just wait a couple of seconds if you want to write that down. There should be some sticky notes on your table. So for those of you that are just coming in, for your information, what we're doing is a Google Hangout of this session. So I'm going to stay seated because it's recording when I show up on the screen what you saw before. So it's actually recording the session right now, and it's live streaming it to YouTube and the Google Plus page that we have set up. And so if you have questions, we ask that you put them on a sticky note, and then we have Brett and Shovik that will circulate to collect your questions. So this is going to be a very basic, very brief 25-minute overview about the Chromebook and Google Apps. So I am going to be providing you with a lot of information that will lead you to resources to learn more on your own, because this time and the way we have this set up, it's not ideal, of course, for you to do your learning right now. Does that make sense? Okay. Did everyone have a chance to write down that URL? Okay, so I'm going to go on. So you already have the link to the URL, so you don't need to write this link down, but I'm just showing that this is what the link to the Hangout looks like. It's a Google Plus link. So let's talk about getting started. And so most of you, since you came in person to pick up your Chromebook, have already done this step. So to get started, you need to go to the activategafe.pps.net website. And that's the site you're going to sync your Outlook email credentials, your Active Directory login with your Google account. So we want to sync those two so that you're not typing two different passwords for each account. So once you get to that page, you're going to be prompted to enter your PPS email username, so the part before the @ symbol, and then you're going to be prompted to also type in your PPS email password. Once you do that, you would hit the activate button, and then after that, you'll get a congratulations message. So everyone did that, correct? Okay. So the next thing to note is that if I am on a computer that is not my Chromebook, because with the Chromebook, and when I log in, I'm automatically logged into my account. But let's say I have another machine at school that I use, another desktop machine or a laptop, regardless, Mac or PC. I can install Chrome because Google Apps works best within the Chrome browser. So Chrome is Google's browser. So if you don't have that installed on your other machines, you're going to want to install that. But if I want to go to my MacBook and log in to my PPS Google Apps account, I'm going to go to that second listed address there, appsforpps.net. So I'm going to type that into the URL field and then hit enter, and then it's going to go and a login page will pop up, and then what I'm going to enter is mlim, or whatever your username is, at appsforpps.net, and then enter my PPS email password, which is now also my Google account password. Does that make sense? Okay, and everybody did the first step already, right? Great. We'll probably, some people have asked for a little screencast or a video for how to activate, so that will be coming. So what is Google Apps? If you are not familiar with Google Apps, it is basically a suite of tools that all live in the cloud. And so what that means is that if I want to access a document that I've created or a slideshow presentation, I can access it from any device, anywhere, anytime. As long as I have internet access and I have a device that can log on to the internet, I can get to my stuff. So it doesn't matter whether or not you're doing it from a PC, a Mac, a tablet, whether it's an iPad or an Android tablet, or a smartphone, so an iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy 3 or any other kind of smartphone will work to get Google Apps. So there are separate apps that you can install on your tablets, like Docs and Sheets. Okay? So the actual suite of Google Apps for Ed that are included are Drive, so that's your hard drive space, your storage space, Docs, which is word processing, Sheets, which is spreadsheets, Slides, which is presentation software, Calendar, Google Sites, which is website creation tool, and then you also have access to Google Groups, which can allow you to create groups. Your school can help create groups for different populations within your building. So for staff only, you also have access to Google Plus and Hangouts. So Google Plus is Google's social networking tool, and you need to have a Google Plus profile completed if you want to do a Hangout like we're doing right now. So the Hangouts are the video conferencing, very similar to Skype. And if you want to do that, and you want to bring in some experts to your class or have your students interview experts or local community members or parents even, you could set up Hangouts to do that. And I'd already mentioned that you want to make sure you use the Chrome browser. Okay, so why Google Apps? And I'm not actually going to show this video because it won't stream to the Hangout at the other locations. It'll just get hung up. But I do have the link here, so if you wanted to watch this brief 1-minute video on your own, feel free to copy down that link. And I don't know if that is a capital I or an L there after the O. So it's either a capital I or an L. Capital I, thank you. Did everyone have a chance to write that down? Okay, great. All right, so here's another link for you to write down. This is an interactive poster that I created, and I'm going to go to it after I give you a few more seconds to write that link down. And so you'll notice that I have all of my links that I have given you are shortened links. So either the goo.gl links, or this one I've used a URL shortener called bit.ly, bit.ly. And if you are familiar with Google Apps already, you'll know that any document address for a Google Doc or a Google app or a slideshow or spreadsheet is very long, super, super long. So it's not something that I want to be able to just give out to you, but I can use these URL shorteners to customize links. And so hopefully some people remember that, oh, bit.ly, Chromebook link. I can go to that. So let me stop sharing this right now. And let me go to, let me open it in a different window here. And so this is sort of cool because what you're seeing here, if you're in the session with us here at Glencoe, is you're seeing the back end of how this Google Hangout is working. And so I can share my screen. You just saw me click a button, so I'm going to share my screen, and it shows me all the open windows that I have on my computer. And so I choose which window do I want to share. So I'm going to share with you this poster, which is what the link is that I gave. And I know that some of you are on it right now, but basically what this poster is, oops, it's a poster created with a tool called ThingLink, and that is a free web-based tool, and it lets you import pictures in and then add annotations to that picture. So what I've done is just brought in an image of basically the Chromebook screen and the Chromebook keyboard for you. And so when you mouse over the poster, you get these little icons that lead to more information, and they also either go to videos or they just tell you, oh, this is what this button does. So for instance, if I mouse over this particular icon, if you see at the top of the screen all these little icons, those are actually your Google Chrome extensions. And extensions are like mini apps that you install to the browser to add more functionality to your browser. So for instance, on my list of extensions, one of them, and you can't see it, one of them is a Google URL shortener. So if I am on a Google Doc or even this particular website, and if I click that extension, which would show up at the top there, it would just automatically create a goo.gl shortened link for me. So the extension is just sort of a shortcut right in your browser that helps you do things, makes you more efficient. And there are lots of different kinds of extensions. There are productivity extensions, there are really fun extensions, there are things for weather, tons of different things. So that's one example. This window here is your apps window. So when you install something from the web store, it's either an app or an extension. And if it's an app, it will show up in this window. To get to this window, you click on that little waffle icon. It's a little grid in the bottom left of your screen. So when you click that, that brings up that window, and it shows all of the apps you have installed. So if you don't have very many, it's because you haven't installed a lot of apps. So another thing you would want to explore on your own is the keyboard. So if you're looking at your keyboard now, and I believe all of you have a Chromebook, it's different than a standard keyboard. So look at it right now, and do you see how it's a little bit different? Some things are missing and not the same as on a regular keyboard. So the things that I like to point out are there is no caps lock key. However, if I'm looking at the poster here, it gives me a tip to turn caps lock on temporarily. You're going to press Alt and the search key, which is the key that has the little magnifying glass on it on your Chromebook where caps lock would be. And then there is no delete key. There's a backspace key, but some people like to delete, do a forward delete. And so if you just mouse over that key, it tells you, oh, if I use Alt backspace, that's the forward delete. The other thing I like to point out is that at the very top of your keyboard, you have those smaller keys that are like your function keys. So the ones that I like to point out, there's this one in the middle that is above the number 6. So if you tap that just by itself, it shows all the different Chrome browser windows you have open, but that's also the button for you to take a screenshot. So if you need to take a screenshot either of the entire screen or you want to select a region of the screen to take a screenshot, that tells you the command there. The other buttons, so what's also nice is that you have these two left and right arrows. Those are basically your back and forward buttons on your browser. So instead of going up to the browser and hitting the back arrow, you can just hit that back arrow on the keyboard. So if you're just surfing and you're going along, and then the other button right next to that, the circular arrow, that's a refresh button for your browser. So that's very handy as well. So if you notice something is taking a long time to load, you're like, what's going on? You can just hit that circular arrow button and it refreshes the page. So instead of going up to the browser and hitting the buttons on the screen, you can just do it right from the keyboard. And so that really explains, I mean, the Chromebook is basically, it's been described as a browser with a keyboard. And so if you can't do anything in an internet browser, then you cannot do it on a Chromebook. So if you do a lot of Adobe Photoshop photo editing, and you do that in a program, right? Can you do it in a browser with a full-fledged app? No, so you can't do that on a Chromebook. Just remember, a Chromebook is a browser with a keyboard. So anything that's web-based, you can probably do it on a Chromebook. All right. So let me go back to my slideshow. Oops. So we have that link. That was the device basics. So here's another opportunity for us to look a little bit more at the collaboration and sharing features of Google Apps. So let me just tell you that the different products in Google Apps, the different tools, they're very similar to tools you would find in Microsoft Office. So Microsoft Word is very similar to Google Docs. PowerPoint is very similar to Slides. The thing with Excel and spreadsheets, so Google Spreadsheets, it's very difficult to manipulate the data in the spreadsheet, and so what a lot of people do is they will export it into Microsoft Excel because you have more functionality to manipulate the data in Excel. So these tools in Google Apps are definitely simpler, but that means that they're also simpler to use. They don't have as much functionality, but they still do the basic things very, very well. One of the things that I think is super awesome about Google Apps is the ability to collaborate and share. And that is not in Microsoft Office. You have that a little bit with Office Online, but the collaboration in Google Apps is awesome. So if you open a browser window and you go to this particular URL, you will access a Google Doc, and that's a capital O, that we can all be in at the same time. And so if you've never seen Google Docs, this will show you what it's like. So I'm going to exit out of this screen sharing to get to that document. And it's right here. And so I'll put the URL back on the screen. So I wanted to demo the sharing, so that's why it's not on yet, so hold on. So here's the document. Let me close this. I knew I'd done that for a reason. So right now, nobody can access it, even though I asked you to. But it's because I wanted to show you the sharing feature and how you actually do that. So here's a document I created. By default, it's only private to me. Okay, so you'll notice file, edit, view, insert, format, tables. These menus are mostly the same as any other word processing program. Okay, it looks familiar to some of you. I see some head nods. But in the top right-hand corner, you have some different options here. So if I want to share this document, so here's this super long link I'd mentioned before. It's highlighted, so that's what you would copy and paste it into a URL shortener, or you could copy it and put it in an email and send the email to somebody. But I can put specific people to share down here. But what I'm going to do is change the access right here. So I'm going to click on change. And because we have our district domain, this is a little different than if you were doing it in a personal Google account. So you'll notice I have these two PPS options now. And that's because we're in our Google domain. So public on the web is the first option. Anyone with the link is the second option. People at Portland Public Schools can find that access. People at Portland Public Schools who have the link can access, or specific people I want to share it with. And I'm going to actually say anyone with the link can access. You don't have to be in the Portland Public Schools domain, but as long as I give out that link, you have access to it. Once I selected that, this showed up at the bottom. Access. Anyone, no sign-in required, can view, comment, or edit. So because I want you all to be in that document, I'm going to say edit. Okay, now I say save. And then I say, anyone's linked edit, great, great, okay. And why can't I get this window? Oops, cancel, that's why. There we go, done. So now if you go, and I can see there are already two people in the document because those avatars at the top, if you keep watching, you'll see a bunch of people start populating into the document. So you might need to refresh your page if you typed that shortened link in. Oops. So now, okay, this is a good learning opportunity. So watch what happens. So I'm going to ask everybody here to stop typing, because one of the advantages of Google Docs, I don't know if you can see it, but it's sort of covered up by these icons. This program and all of the Google apps autosave, so you don't need to tell kids to constantly save. It does it after you change something in the document. It will autosave. The other thing is the sharing, which we're experiencing now. But now if I go to File, I have something called See Revision History. And now, if I look at this, I'm going to see, if I click on this part, it shows me and highlights the parts that somebody else typed in. Oops, let's see if I do this. So here's showing some of the changes. But if I go to the very bottom, when I created the document, right, because I want, it's going to be blank because I want that link there still. And now look what I can do. I can restore this revision. So I'm going to hit Restore. And now it goes back, and I'm going to say, please don't delete this link. All right. And so you can work collaboratively on documents. So your students can work collaboratively together. You can work with colleagues and do lesson plans. If you are sick at home but your team is still meeting after school, you can have a shared document that you all access even though you're at home. So I can also highlight some text, and I can add a comment. So if I click on comments, I can add a comment. And I can say, don't delete this, and then comment. And so you'll see the text is highlighted, but when I actually click on the comment, it brightens the actual where the comment is referring to. Did you see that? So I'm off, but now when I click on the comment, so it tells you, because sometimes you might have several comments all stacked around each other and you don't know what it's referring to. So, and then you'll also see over here when I added the comment, if I'm a teacher and I'm giving a student feedback using these comments, the student can look at what your comment was and they can resolve it. So if you said you need to add more sources to your bibliography or something like that, and let's say the kid goes back and adds more sources, they can resolve this, and if I resolve it, the comment disappears. Clicking on these three dots, I can edit or just delete the comment. So I'm going to resolve that. The comment disappears, and then the highlighting disappears. All right. So this is, somebody reopened my comment and now they've deleted it again. But it's crazy, right? To think this is, I mean, we can do this. We can use this kind of technology with our kids and with our colleagues. It's awesome. All right, so I'm actually going to go back to the presentation because we're almost out of time. Oops. So I'm going to, oh, great. I am just going to present here. So this is the site where you're going to get more learning resources. So you might want to write that down. And actually, I don't know if I'm sharing that. So let's make sure that I am sharing that correctly. I don't think so. So bit.ly/PPS GAF site. So GAF, if you keep hearing GAF, that stands for Google Apps for Education. Okay, so know that when people say that, that's what they mean. And I'm actually going to show that site first before we go to our questions. Yep. So it's bit.ly/PPS GAF site. And remember, GAF is GAFE. So let me get it up here because I want to show you what it looks like. So this is the site here, and this is our Google Apps site. Tons of information, so you'll want to explore this for sure. The place that you're really going to want to explore is this whole section on the left-hand navigation bar that says Learn More. I keep adding more stuff to this, and I'm trying to pare it down just to the things I think are most worthy of being on there, because I don't want it to get too long. But 40 ways to start using Google Apps in school. So especially if you're a teacher new to Google Apps and you don't have a bunch of student technology, there's some good ideas on how you can incorporate Google Apps for yourself first. The resources that I showed you, that Thing Link poster, some other workshops that I've done, those agendas are also linked on here. Oops, I didn't want to go there. Go back. The ones that you'll want to take note of are the PPS Google Apps training modules. So this is self-paced online learning that goes through any Google app that's available pretty much. And it basically walks you through with videos and written directions on going through tasks and assignments to learn about the different apps. And then the other thing that I like to point out is, let's see, Google and Education Learning Center. So that's Google's site of resources for teachers. And then also there's a Google Apps lesson plans site. So if you're interested in trying to do some lesson plans, I would search through that database. There is also, I don't know if any of you are going to be responsible for training your buildings, but there is this Intro to PPS Google Apps slide deck. So it's definitely more built, that slide deck is built out more than the one that I'm using today. It has way more information on it. So if you wanted to share that at a staff meeting, you could just point your principal to it, or you could do it yourself. Say, check this out. All right, so I'm back here, and now let's see how many questions there are. So this is the part of the Hangout, and it's funny because I'm looking up, but I'm looking at the corner. I should be looking this way, so I'm looking at the questions. Oops. So there's a feature that allows people to submit questions, and so I'm looking at them, and there aren't that many. Excellent. So the cool thing, if you're looking at this, if you got the link that I sent out and you went to this Hangout, what you would see is a space to answer questions, but then you can also vote on questions. So you can see questions that other people have written. And if you really like the question that somebody else wrote, you would click on +1. That's basically a like. And so what this allows me to do is see the votes assigned to the question, so I answer the ones that are higher pluses. Does that make sense? So you could do this in your classroom. It would be awesome. So if you had, if you had kids that, if you had a kid at home perhaps that wasn't in school or was sick, and so you did some kind of demo like this, and then you had, if you had more than one kid virtually joining, they could submit questions, and then people could vote on the questions, and then you answer the ones that are ranked higher, right, that have more pluses. So it doesn't look like we have a bunch of questions, so I think we have time to answer them all. So the first question, so on my end, as the person hosting the Hangout, I need to select the question, because the other cool thing about Google Hangouts is that when I select the question, it automatically marks it in the video where I have answered that question. So if you just want to look at the questions and then go directly to the spot where I answer, that's what this is doing when I say select. So the question is, my school has a Google Calendar already. How do I access it? So every school webpage has that shared Google Calendar, and I would say the first place to start is to go to your secretary to find out who has access to that calendar, because generally when those were set up, I believe it was the secretary that had the rights to it, but now that we're going to Google Apps, you can share that calendar with other people, so it's not just the secretary that can post things on there. So as a building, if you decide that, oh, we want this person, this person, this person, and this person to be responsible for adding events to the shared calendar, then you can do that. Because just like we shared that Google Doc, you can also share calendars. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm going to click done. That question was answered. Next question. Can we do attendance and grades through Synergy on our Chromebooks? So I'm going to answer just from what I saw yesterday, and then maybe Shobik or Brett can answer that question as well. But we had, during the Common Core Best Practices Institute, the last couple of days, we had Google App sessions going, and some people were testing Synergy, and they said it worked, and the attendance worked. The only problem that they saw was there was some glitches with Teacher View, but the other stuff worked. Do you know anything else about that?
So the only thing would be there's some issue with Teacher View. The other issue would be you might have a pop-up blocker installed, and that would block your pop-up, but Synergy requires you to allow that pop-up. So once you click on it, the pop-up blocker will come and say allow once. So I would suggest you to allow it always for that site, and if you do that, it's just going to work fine.
All right. Done with that question. Select. The next question from James is, will there be other training events other than what's online? So we are working with the Office of Teaching and Learning to offer some regular trainings that are face-to-face in addition to virtual trainings. So we just need to get a schedule determined, and then we'll be publicizing that information. So that will be coming. There also, it could be that maybe there's somebody in your building that is already really familiar with Google Apps, and so that's something to ask maybe at the back to school meeting. Who all, just do a quick survey. Are there some people that are really familiar with Google Apps that could help the rest of us? So I would suggest that. Tomorrow there are more trainings. This exact same training is happening, yes. It'll be tomorrow. It's going to be at Irvington, though, in person, and then also broadcast live to Maplewood and Glencoe. Oh, here's a good question from Jonathan Gilbert. How do we print from our Chromebooks? So, Chromebooks do print, but we do not have a district-wide enterprise solution for printing yet. So we are researching that and trying to figure out what we're going to be able to recommend for teachers to do. So the easiest thing that we are saying for you to do if you want to print is to log into Google on a computer that already prints to access your stuff, right, from your Google account. So if you want to print out a Google Doc that you created or a spreadsheet or presentation, just log into Google on a computer in your room that already prints, and then you can print the document that you need. That make sense? All right. Here's another good question from Jonathan. How do we connect to our current data projectors? So if you have an existing data projector that is an older projector, it will most likely not have an HDMI port. So a Chromebook doesn't have a VGA connector, which is what the older projectors have and what you are probably connected to now with your current laptop and projector if you have one. So it's usually that blue cable with the 15 pins. So if you have that, you could buy an adapter that will be a VGA adapter to HDMI. So you just connect that to the end of the blue cable, and then the HDMI port gets plugged. You plug that into the HDMI port. The HDMI, yes. So HDMI is what's currently on most new TVs that you buy, and if you have Apple TV, you have to plug it in via HDMI. That's just an example of where you might have seen that. So that's one way to do it. You can also, if you have a newer projector that has an HDMI port, you can connect to your Chromebook directly with an HDMI cable. And those cables are sort of expensive for some reason. They're about $20 just for the cable. But that plugs directly from the projector into the Chromebook. So that's another option that you have. There is another thing called a Chromecast, but we're not really recommending that because you can't secure a Chromecast. So those of you familiar with Apple TV, you know that you can install a PIN code, right? So that students or other people can't hijack your Apple TV. But a Chromecast doesn't allow you to assign a security number or a PIN to it yet. So anybody, if they had the app installed, they could see that your Chromecast is plugged in and say, hey, I want to cast this crazy website to your classroom, even though I probably shouldn't. So you want to, I would say the things that I've been recommending to the other teachers the last 2 days is I really like the Chromecast, though, for a small group. So if you know you're going to be using it perhaps with a small group and you're not worried about some of those inappropriate issues happening, I would not use it in a whole group situation, though, like with a group this big. I mean, there's some other issues where you have to cast your tabs, so you have to constantly disconnect and reconnect.
So the district doesn't have a plan to have us connect these volume tools for connecting us to projectors at this point?
No, so for the tech bundle schools, the schools that are getting tech bundles, the HDMI cable or adapter is not going to be included, but it will be on the IT purchasing list for schools to purchase. All right, our next question. How do we share documents from my personal account to my work account? Good question. So on the PPS Google Apps site, under the FAQ section, there are about 4 or 5 different ways for you to migrate personal documents to your professional district account. The two that I would recommend, in your personal account, you can just share the document with yourself with your PPS account. So just like that share button shows up, if you go in there and share it specifically with your PPS account, that's one way, and then it just shows up in your drive, your Google Drive. The other thing you can do is you can select multiple documents and then download them as a zip file. It downloads to your desktop or wherever you set it to download, and then you can upload that zip file into your PPS Google Docs account. So those are the 2 easiest ways, I think, to migrate personal documents. There's another printing question about when printing from Chromebooks will be resolved, and we just answered that, but I'm going to say we don't have a timeline when it's going to be resolved just yet. So I would just go back to that solution of going to a computer that already prints to print. All right. A question from an STC perspective. What do you anticipate the biggest struggle for teachers will be with Chromebooks? And this is from one of our librarians, Jenny Gap, at Peninsula. By the way, I guess I don't need to read that part. Hi, Jenny. The biggest struggle for teachers with the Chromebooks. What do you think? Somebody here, what do you think is going to be the biggest struggle? Okay, so one teacher here says the biggest struggle may be for teachers that are already used to using another device like iPads, and somehow how do you merge the Google app use on an iPad? So that could be one struggle. Any other ideas from you all, the teachers? what do you feel like, you've seen the Chromebook now, what do you think the biggest struggle is going to be for you personally? Okay. So the answer from one of the teachers here was perhaps the Gmail accounts for students. So we said Gmail is turned off right now, and Brett told us sometime in the spring we hope to have Gmail turned on for staff and students. But the great thing about having a Google Apps domain is that you can set permissions on the domain. So for instance, if you're worried about Gmail, you can say kids can't email outside of the district domain. So things like that, those are some of the benefits of having Google Apps for the district. Any other struggles that people can foresee or you want to share? Yes.
I think not being able to print. I think the instinct is to make this your laptop.
Right.
Because it's faster and
right.
slicker and you can't do everything with your laptop.
Yep. So another teacher here said a struggle might be the printing. So not being able to print just from this device. Because as we know, we can go to a different device and print. But having that, it's not a fully fledged laptop because I can't do the printing and some other things that I might be used to doing. Yeah, so that's a good one. Anything else? Struggles that people want to share? Deborah?
Using this in meaningful ways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a digital immigrant, and it seems like far-reaching to me, and sci-fi like.
Uh-huh.
Excited about it. But I think I have some more training for.
Yep.
Time with it.
Yep. So another teacher here said a struggle will be using this device in meaningful ways or even using Google Apps in meaningful ways. And I would wholly recommend that if you are excited about this but you feel a little hesitant, I would say that one easy thing to do is to create an agenda that's clickable. So if you have, let's say, kids going to a computer lab, or you have some devices in your classroom, or even recommend to your administrator, you should create an agenda on Google Docs, because we all have these devices now, and then any of the links or anything that the administrator puts in there, you can just click on those. And then you should start having staff meeting minutes just archived on a Google Doc, and you just keep adding to the top, right? And all of the older sessions go down at the bottom. So you're using the same document every time for staff meeting notes, that kind of thing, or even for team meeting notes. So for grade level teams, you could have a Google Doc, plug in all your resources or websites in there that you want to share with each other, and then people can just go to that. Because whenever you type a link into Google Docs, it automatically becomes hyperlinked. So nobody has to type in the address, they just click on the link. So you can try to upload them into Google Drive, but you want to remember that setting that I showed yesterday about converting to Google format. You need to make sure you have that checked, because I don't know that it's going to upload it with all the formatting from Keynote. So it's not going to work with a Pages or a Keynote document, but if you convert that first to PDF and then upload it, it might switch it over. It will look better.
The problem is that I cannot access PDF. I have no, in any platform, I have no way of changing PDF after PDF.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I can
Yep.
I haven't taken it after I transferred it to PDF. So I don't have a PDF.
There's an app called Notable that is a PDF annotation tool, but I don't know that it allows you to edit PDFs. So you just have to search the web store and see if you can find something. All right, I'm going to keep going on these questions. I don't think we have that many more. Will this presentation be added to the PPS GAF site? Yep, we will link to it on the GAF site as well as the Google Apps blog.
What is the page that the PPS can?
So that URL is bit.ly/PPS GAF site. And we will also add these, can we add these questions and answers to the GAF page? So we can try to add those to the FAQ page. I think I answered that one about personal account already. Oh, here's an interesting question. If your projector is on the ceiling, then what do we use? So if your projector's on the ceiling, there's a cord or cable running somewhere on the wall with the VGA connection. So you'd have to buy an adapter, the VGA to HDMI adapter. And let's look at this question. Will we have a school-related Gmail account different from personal Gmail and different from Outlook? Will students have email so we can share docs? So we sort of talked about this a little bit. Your account right now is mlim@appsforpps.net or whatever your username is, right? So Gmail is turned off, so if you sent something to that address, I would not get it. However, that's just your account name for your Google account, and so that's what you use to log in. So it is different from your Outlook mail. However, it does not have any mail functionality right now. So for instance, if I share something with Deborah and I share it with her appsforpps.net email, it'll just show up in your drive. But you might not know it's there until you go there, right? So I'm going to have to send you an Outlook email saying, Deborah, check your Google Apps drive or check your Google Drive because I shared a document with you. And so in Google Drive, there's a section that says My Drive, and then there's a section that says Incoming. Incoming is all of the stuff that people share with you. Okay? Will students have email? So we sort of talked about that a little bit. They will have email as well, so that you can share docs with them, definitely.
When you say that the email is turned off, is that only when you go to share, but you can't add a personal email
No.
to the share button?
You can. So that's how you're sharing something with somebody, is that you put in their apps for PPS and it just shows up in their drive. You just don't get the email notification. So there's remember when we went to share the doc and you could enter people's email addresses? There was a box that said you can. And it gives you a little notification that says you're about to share this with somebody outside of PPS. Are you sure you want to do that? But there's that box that was checked that says notify via email. I leave that checked by default, even though apps for PPS email is turned off, but I just leave it checked anyway. And the person won't get an email, but it will show up in their drive. All right, we have gone through all of the questions in the Q&A. Adrian, you have a question? So, good question. Adrian asked, do we run out of cloud space? So, in your Google account, your Google Drive, you have 30 gigs of storage space. So when you're in the drive, at the bottom, in the bottom left-hand corner, it shows you how much space you've used, and it'll say so much of 30 gigs. The thing to note is that anything created outside of Google Docs counts towards that 30 gigs. Anything created in Google Docs format does not count. So if you upload a bunch of video or PDFs or Word documents, PowerPoint, those count towards the 30 gigs. Anything created in Google Docs, slides, or sheets does not count towards the 30 gigs. Any other final questions from our group here at Glencoe? All right, so I'm going to say thank you. We're going to stop the broadcast and see you tomorrow.